became a coordinator of YM Gamida when he was 18. His Islamic study of knowledge is with Al-Maghrib as well as similar organization. Currently, as of right now, he's studying Fiqh of Ibadah through YM, and as of right now, he's 21 years old and he's studying chemistry at USC.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Can everyone hear me okay? So inshallah, what I'm going to be talking about tonight, the topic is the balancing act. And so it's about how to balance life as a Muslim here in America, particularly for you. So I'm going to start talking about is certain problems that you face. One of the biggest problems is, well, first of all, not realizing that you have a problem. Because if you don't know that you have a problem, how are you going to start fixing anything? So we have to realize what these problems are. And more specifically, what's the cause of those problems? Because there's a lot of sins that youth go through, that they experience throughout their life. And what's actually happening is that sin is a result of something else. I'll give you an example. Let's say you have the flu, and you have with it a headache, a runny nose, a lot of other symptoms. And let's say that headache is really bothering you, right? And so you take some pills maybe, and you try and get rid of the headache. But what's the real problem? It's not the headache, it's the flu. The flu is the thing causing the headache, and in fact, the flu is causing the runny nose, and your body aches, or whatever else it is. So what we're looking for is the root problem. What it is that's causing the symptoms. There are certain diseases, certain poisons, that when they infect a person, they change the way that he acts, or he or she acts. Things that they do, the things that happen to them, the things that overcome their life. And so that's what we're after here tonight, inshallah. So there are many problems and many diseases causing these problems. But one particular disease, the scholars have said, was the disease the Prophet ﷺ feared for this ummah the most. Does anyone want to take a guess? What was that problem, that disease, that poison that inflicts people? The love of the dunya. You're getting very close. Very close. Something very specific though. It might even be included in that. It is in fact overexposure to shamelessness. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is, let's say, I'll give you an example. So if we're overexposed to something, then we start to get used to it. Let's say, for example, you hear a word, or you see a certain action over and over and over. The first time you hear it, or the first time you see it, you might feel disgusted. You might feel like it is disturbing. You know, something you're not supposed to, no normal human being would like to see or hear. But after a while, when you get used to it, it's not a big deal anymore. And that's exactly the issue. Why isn't it a big deal anymore? So, when you hear something vulgar or something rude, it starts to grow on you, and you start to get used to it. When we were little, when we were, let's say, elementary school, right? When we heard a bad word, what happened? We went, ooh, or it was a huge deal for us, right? Like, you're not supposed to say that word, right? But now when you hear a bad word, what happens? It's not a big deal. You hear them all the time. I'm not making a speech about cussing or anything like that. But what I want to ask is, why isn't it a big deal? Like, were we wrong to think that when we were little? That hearing that word, or saying it even, was a bad thing? Were we wrong to think that when we were? Or are we wrong in thinking that it's not a big deal now? And that's kind of what we're after. Because after it grows on you, it starts, the seriousness of that issue starts to leave. So I was talking with some people once, and actually some youth, and on this specific issue, and they said, like, when you're talking and they're trying to like convince me that maybe cussing wasn't such a bad thing. It's like sometimes you just have to put some emphasis in your words. Like when you want to tell somebody you really screwed up, you don't say bleep, bleep, like you just have to let it out, right? For emphasis. And it just gets you thinking, right? That how is it, why is that what's supposed to be the mark of emphasis, right? Because it's not something natural, not something you are supposed to do. But like I said, I'm not going to focus on cussing this time. But what happens to Muslims nowadays is that they feel like these things, these occurrences are no longer a big deal. Like somebody give me an issue that you think, well, particularly the youth here, but something that you think like the adults or, you know, people, figures in the community make a big deal about. Give me an example. Anyone? Yeah. Video games? Why do you think that is, though? Yeah, exactly, right? So what happens is when a kid or somebody young or even somebody my age, right? When somebody gives you an advice, when they say, you shouldn't be doing that, or you shouldn't be doing this, oftentimes you feel like they're making a big deal out of nothing, right? Oh, it's not that big an issue, right? But why isn't it a big issue? It's because you're so desensitized to it, even at a young age, that you don't realize what's bad in it anymore. And so what we're looking for is the disease behind these things. Overexposure to shamelessness is something that causes many other diseases, many other sins to sprout from. So this particular sin, overexposure to shamelessness, what are some symptoms of it? What are some things that it causes? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, maybe I should redefine it. So, overexposure to shamelessness is seeing or hearing vulgar things over and over and over. And so some symptoms of it is after you've heard it or seen it so much you grow used to it, and you don't see it as a big deal anymore. So, when a certain scene comes on a TV show, or a movie, or when you're hanging out with people and they start talking about something, and I'm not just talking about cussing, I mean backbiting, things like that, we don't see them as a huge deal anymore. And we start to lose that sense of guilt, even when even falling into these things. And when you lose that sense of guilt, that's when you have to be scared. Because when you lose that sense of guilt, now you don't see it as something you need to even repent from, because you're not guilty. And that's what's so dangerous about things. After you're so overexposed to it, so used to it, it starts to seem like something, exactly, that's not a big deal anymore. And you don't see it as a big deal, and then you don't try to even repent from it. It's like becomes a normal occurrence. That's what I was saying. So I'm going to give you another example, another sin. One that I want to highlight that I feel is really needs to be addressed in, especially youth in this society, is rebellion or disrespecting towards one's parents or towards the people that raised them. Because what's happening nowadays is that youth are starting to rebel, and parents are often not seeing where this is coming from. And they're like, I thought I raised my child good, why is this happening? And it's raising a lot of questions of why this is even occurring. And so I wanted you guys to give me some input. What do you guys, this sin, what do you think is the disease or the poison that's causing it? Because disrespecting your parents is a bad thing, but it's a symptom. And it's caused by something else, like we were talking about at the beginning. There's poisons, and these poisons cause symptoms, and disrespecting one's parents is a symptom. What do you think is the root cause of it?
Not being close to Islam?
Yes. What particularly? Because that's very general, right?
Society, movies, television shows.
Exactly, right? Kind of the sort of stuff I was already talking about, right? It's a combination of a lot of things. Does anyone want to throw something else out?
School.
School? Well, what particular about school?
Environment of the school.
Right. Right. Because when somebody is hanging around with certain types of people, they start to become more and more like those types of people. Good point. Anyone else have anything?
Anybody watch Bart Simpson, how he treats
Right.
type of thing?
I was actually about to bring that up.
Okay.
Because if you think about how the influence is on certain kids, right? If you throw out shows like The Simpsons, or like Family Guy, or other cartoons, things like that, what they always paint the picture of is the child being the really, really smart person, really intelligent, you know, the hero of the show, like South Park, for example, right? And they paint the adults as, you know, overweight, idiotic people, right? And what ends up happening is the child or the person watching the show, the youth in particular, starts to feel themselves as knowing more than the people that raised them. And what this breeds, I would